Okay, well, um, it's really good to see everybody. I don't get to come to the groups very often, but this is I think my fourth time speaking. So maybe some of you know, I've heard stuff I have to say before, but this time Wendy asked me to speak about the group that I host and the resources that we've put together. So I thought I would just take a couple of minutes and tell you about the origination. And if you've already heard this a few times, I apologize. But in 2017 and 2018, I attended the Afterlife Research Education Institute, better known as AREI, symposium in like I said, 2017 and 2018. And at one of those groups, I thought it was the second one, but the timing doesn't work out quite right, but it really doesn't matter. But at the end of the symposium, Craig Hogan got everybody together who was left, and there were like 800 people. And whoever was left was in the ballroom, and he said that they wanted to put together a bunch of Zoom groups all around the world, each one to have a different topic of discussion. And he wanted to know what topics people were interested in. So I am a forensic handwriting specialist and document examiner. So handwriting is of great interest to me. And I put my hand up and I said, I would be interested in being in a group for automatic writing. So, okay, good. I got put on the list. So I expected to join a group and learn from somebody who knew about how to do automatic writing and whatever that might be. But as it turned out, I was appointed to be the host of the group. So I teach handwriting analysis, but I don't know automatic writing, so I couldn't teach that. So it's not a class. A lot of people seem to think it's a class, but it's a discussion group. And the first meeting was January 17th, 2018, and we had 5 in attendance. William Murray was my co-host for quite a while, and several of that core group have continued, and we've had Sister Rosemarie and Chasey West and Carol Brown and Kathleen Jenkins, and so many others have come and gone and come back along the way. You know, people come and they stay for a while and then they go away, maybe they come back. It's a very open-ended thing because it's a discussion. So one of the first things that we discussed was whether or not it was important to start really any kind of a spiritual session, whether you need a prayer for protection. And we know there's some controversy about whether this is needed, or maybe just having the right intention is enough, because I believe that it's a personal thing, but it can't hurt. And one of the things that I had researched before we started the group was a prayer that I got from British medium Brian Hurst, who is now retired and living in Palm Springs, but he channeled Dr. Grant, and I'd had a reading from him and was in some group sessions, and he used a prayer when opening a session that I think, even though it was for a mediumship session, I believe that it could be applied to any type of a spiritual session. So I'm going to share that with you now. It's here. Okay. So this is Brian's prayer. I don't know if he made it up or if he got it somewhere, but he gave me permission to use it. Father, Mother, God, we come here in the name of love, light, peace, and truth to seek contact with any friends, loved ones, family, or guides who have made the change called death. We ask that the power of the Holy Spirit uplift and protect each and every one of us as we attempt to make this very difficult act known as communication. And so we ask, spirit friends, draw near to me. Spirit friends, speak clear to me. Spirit friends, slow down your voices. When we hear, the heart rejoices. Give us glimpses of eternity. Help us know that you are free. Give us names and facts and places. Help us understand heaven's graces. Impress your thoughts upon us with emotion and simplicity. And then he asks, at this time, please begin a transmission of any thoughts, images, information, feelings, or sensations that you wish to share. And personally, I think that's a lovely prayer, and I'm happy to share it with anybody. The resource spreadsheet that I put together, I will send Wendy the latest version of it, and she's welcome to share it with anybody, or you can contact me. And probably the best address is sheilalowe@roadrunner.com. That's my personal, or sheila@sheilalowe.com is my business one. So I also went to Uncle Google and onto YouTube and asked about automatic writing and got a whole bunch of information. And there's, if you Google now and search on automatic writing or in YouTube, you'll find more current ones, because this was 6 years ago. But I found a bunch of articles and I narrowed them down to, I think, maybe 4 or 5. And William found one from Popular Mechanics in 1896. So this has been going on for a long time. At the first meeting, we set an intention to practice daily a meditation and do, with the intent to produce some automatic writing. And we would report back at the next meeting on the results. So at each meeting for the first 25, I wrote up summaries of what was going on. I took notes as people were speaking, and then I summarized them and sent them out to everybody who was on the list. So when I was thinking about what to talk to you guys about, I went back and looked at some of those, and they were really astonishing how much good stuff there was in them. So I just pulled out a few things to share with you. And I hope there will be something of use here. So remember, you'll get the spreadsheet, and you don't have to write down links and things like that. I should also admit that after a couple of years, I really stopped adding the books and things, but Giles has been terrific at keeping them up in the group now. I don't know if he has a list. So the first meeting we had 5 people. By the third meeting we had 10. And now we usually have between 20 and 25. People joined us from all around the country and other parts of the world. And so a few of the early summaries had tips that I thought were worth sharing. Nina, and I don't remember which Nina, but Nina explained that she learned to distract the thinking left brain. And this was while she's giving a reading. She said she distracts the left brain in order to get into the right brain by juggling 2 tennis balls with both hands constantly while she's giving a reading, which I thought was very interesting. I haven't tried it. Sister Rosemarie talked about a practice of focusing above the crown chakra, creating a still point. And she also experienced a way to get into the right brain while she was in Africa, dancing to drum. Kathleen shared a prayer of protection from Robert Moss, which is a lot shorter than the one I read you. It is, may the doors and gates and paths be open, and the doors and gates between the worlds. And may the doors and gates of any who wish me or my loved ones any harm be closed, and may it be so, which I thought was a very nice one. Kathleen also recommended the book Writing Down Your Soul by Janet Connor. So that link is in the spreadsheet. At the 4th meeting, we added more recommended materials by Sanaya Roman, because I love her book, Opening to Channel, and Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. We talked about Suzanne Giesman's Expanding Awareness Meditation MP3. And it was suggested that for anyone who felt anxious about practicing automatic writing, that they try smudging with sage to clear out any negative energy first, and to ask their spirit team for protection. By the time I did some more YouTube research and found more videos about automatic writing, there were nearly 30 people on the mailing list. We have, I think, about 150 on the mailing list now. We added Scott Milligan's messages, which are on Facebook, and Sandra Champlain's We Don't Die Radio on YouTube, which I've found a really great resource for good mediums and other things. At one point, I shared two short, but I found helpful messages that I received with my automatic writing practice the evening before a meeting. And these were nothing new or profound, but here's what I got. What you describe may mean nothing to you, but everything to your listener. Say it if you hear it. No matter how inane or irrelevant it seems to you, there is a message for someone else. And that proved helpful to me a couple of days later when I attended a class in mediumship and was assigned to read a woman who partnered with me. And some of the things I gave her seemed silly, but they actually got her pretty excited. I don't remember what they were, but apparently they were accurate. And the second message I got was, sitting in the power, even if you don't get anything, even if you're asleep, connects you with your spirit team. So that was good advice. At another meeting, Kathleen shared that when she feels spirit coming close to her, she yawns a lot. So you might look at that and see if that happens to you. The message she got in automatic writing was, quote unquote, the yawn enhances our first meeting. And then she shared, she's a big fan of Joe Dispenza, and he said, let go in anticipation of meditations. It's okay to sit in silence and not expect anything, nor to think anything. Astrid made a suggestion, ask for something you can validate. And Judy said that when she's receiving information psychically, she feels her energy expanding outward. But when the information is coming in from spirit, she feels spirit coming into her energy space. So it's a good idea to be aware of how you feel in your body when you practice automatic writing or really using any other spiritual tools. On that same week, my answer when I tried automatic writing was to hear the words dispositive proof. And that dispositive proof refers to providing a final resolution in legal matters. And since I work in the legal field as a handwriting expert, I guess that was supposed to mean something to me. But what I wrote, I don't remember now why, but it was something about a tingle. Because if I feel a tingle on the top of my head, I sense, and I'm not a medium, but I sense that there's somebody, one of my people are around me. And what I wrote was that the tingle would be different in mediumship and psychic senses, and that's different for everyone. And I don't remember this, but I wrote, for me, a shadowy figure has appeared, and the pictures and words. What was most important was the shadowy figure that I saw is how it was then. It changes with practice, and the rest develops gradually over time, which I'm sorry to confess that I did not continue to develop. Yeah, that's another story. Some other things, Lauren suggested asking 2 questions in our meditations. How can we identify who the message is for? And when multiple spirits show up, how do we identify who they are? Good questions. Kathleen again said when our energy feels at a low ebb, changing to a different room when meditating could be helpful because I've heard it said recently, and I don't know who said it, but that spirit says our world has become very noisy and hard to make contact. So it may be a good idea to be away from electronic equipment like a TV that could possibly interfere with energy. It's a good thought. Astrid picks a piece of music and focuses on one instrument in the piece, and then at the end of the piece, she clears her mind and listens for a message. I reported that I had started to play Suzanne Gieseman's Hemisync CD, as I often did. But this time, the Hemisync CD didn't come on. It was the soundtrack for the Superman movie that came up, and I didn't remember downloading it, although I am a big fan of Superman. So I decided to try it out, and apparently I got some interesting results. But the main point is, sometimes changing up various elements of our meditation can be helpful. It comes out that meditation doesn't come easy for everyone. It certainly doesn't for me. And the thought occurred to me that, I've published 19 books. of my own and more for other people. But I hear people say a lot of times, I'm going to write a book someday, and they never do. And it occurs to me that not everyone needs to write a book. Maybe not everyone needs to meditate. I've heard some famous mediums say that they don't. So it's all an individual thing, and it's all about intention. There was some more talk about yawning and how it can be a sign of spirit starting to communicate using your energy. Astrid said that 2 instruments are known to draw spirit, the harpsichord and the harmonica. And then Philip added that the ghost frequency is 18.98 hertz. Who knew? He's told us about his haunted doll, Paul. You may have heard him speak on that. I know he's spoken to the group before. And so many things happened. William's wife in spirit, whose name is Irene, changed his TV to her favorite shows. And on one occasion, she switched it to a show where the song Goodnight Irene was playing. Kathleen said she had a session with her guides that took place at 3:45 a.m. and ended with spirit saying to her, I've been with you for 11 years now. So, lots more of this stuff. Astrid has been scrying with a black mirror, put a candle on each side. She said she suggests started out thinking silly things until spirit tells you something more meaningful. This was interesting. I had been reporting on my trip to AREI in 2018, and one of the speakers was Walter Semke. I think that's how you pronounce his name, right? And he was talking about reincarnation, and he demonstrated why he believes that Trump was Nero and Putin was Julius Caesar. So whatever your political leanings are, I thought that was kind of interesting to see that from 2018, now that we're right on the eve of the election. When I got to the airport, it was in lockdown because police were investigating an abandoned car, which turned out to be an abandoned car. So my flight home was delayed. It was 6 o'clock. So I stayed at the hotel and I had a lovely chat with Joe Higgins, who you may know, and he was collecting stories of signs for his book. Here is just an aside. Like I said, my flight home was delayed 45 minutes. And when I got on, it's Southwest, so you choose your seats, I had the dubious pleasure of sitting next to a character, or across the aisle from a guy. He looked like Voldemort, and he turned out to be Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano. And I know this because he told everyone who would listen, I bet I'm more famous than you. Just Google my name. I'm more famous than you. Ad nauseum. So to save you from Googling, I will just tell you, he was John Gotti's fixer. And at that time, he had just ended a 20-year sentence that involved about 20 murders. So that was interesting. It was around that time that we started branching out and having speakers, and I got too lazy to do summaries, and we had speakers, so we were recording them. And Tracy Bolton was our first guest. I'd taken a couple of classes from her after getting a very impressive reading. And then we had Joe Higgins talking about signs. And since then, we've had, I'd say, about at least 20 guest speakers on these topics. And there may be more. Orbs, sound healing, remote viewing, fairies, crystals, crystal grids, tarot cards, ear medicine, graphotherapy, healing, astrology, purple papers, mediumship, angels, pendulums, synchronicities, shamanic dreaming, Akashic records, EVP and ITC, images from the afterlife, past lives, gematria, channeling, and ghost hunting. So there are links to all of those talks in the spreadsheet, and they're marked unlisted on my YouTube channel, so you have to have the link to see them, I think. And one of the YouTube videos I found was a meditation that was specific to automatic writing. It's like 15 minutes long, and I tried to get hold of the podcaster to be a guest, but never got a response. And he spoke kind of quickly, and I would like him to slow down. So one of our members at the time, Joyce Smith, who is among other things a musician, re-recorded the script slower. and she put it to binaural beat music. So if you put a headset on, you get something extra from it. And from time to time, if we don't have anything else going on that night, the group does a meditation and then shares what they got from it. So that is also in the spreadsheet. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what we have been doing. The next speaker is going to be next week. We meet on the first and third Wednesdays of the month at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And we're having Jamie Miller, who I heard on Sandra Champlain's We Don't Die show. And then I was so impressed with her and her attitude that I had a reading from her just a few weeks ago. And I invited her to come and speak to the group. So she's coming on November 6th. And I just booked Mark Christopher Nelson for the first week in December, which I think is December 4th, I think. Yes, December 4th. And I've had a reading from him, but I flew home on the same flight because he used to live not too far from me, I found out. And we flew home on the same flight from AREI, and he told me some very interesting ghost hunting stories. He's been on some shows about ghost hunting, so we're going to have him. And you are all welcome to come at any time. I see some of our speakers here, like Bill, who has stayed up all night to be with us. And twice, not just once, twice. And we'd love to have you back, Bill. So, I could just sit here and read you pages and pages of stuff, but you don't want to hear that. I've probably spoken long enough, huh?
Wow, that's absolutely fascinating. I'm just astounded at the range of what you've been doing, Sheila, and it's just wonderful to hear it all in one go. Maybe we could hear from some of your people who've been on your group, and perhaps just talk about one thing that they remember, or something that really had an impact on them.
Yeah. So before you do that, I should acknowledge that we're using Peg Brantley's Zoom room now, and she's my backup and also a mystery writer like me. So she couldn't be here today. She wanted to, but I just want to acknowledge her.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay, I'll just launch in, but I lost my husband passed over. I didn't lose him. He's with me. But Sheila invited me because I happened to take her book, Rising from the Ashes. Growing from the Ashes. I happened to have that in the hospital during his final illness. And she invited me to the group, and I was astounded by some of the speakers. The first one who blew me away was Lisa Salvatore, who's an astrologer, and she impressed me at that first meeting because she could bring up anyone's chart. Someone happened to ask her to bring up Trump and Biden, and she could go from their birth charts to the transits they were going through at that moment so readily that I signed up to do a deep dive with her. And when she asked me my husband's date of birth and then when he passed over, he said it was his time. And then she looked at my transit at that particular moment, and she said, he had to go so you could grow. And I have started some of the automatic writing. Suzanne Giesman, as a speaker, has majorly influenced me because she's just amazing at bringing spirit in. And right now, about 15 months after he passed, I feel he's with me most of the time. It's comforting and very helpful as I go through all of his things. So I will just quit there, or I could go on and on probably.
Thank you. The book that Honey is talking about was a memoir that I released last year. It's about my spiritual growth from the murder of my daughter by her boyfriend in 2000. And I came from a very strict religious cult background that didn't accept any meditation or life after earth or any of that stuff. And so it's about what I've learned from her crossing to now. And so that was, I called it Growing from the Ashes, because hopefully that's what I did.
Absolutely. So thank you. Do we have anybody else who'd like to perhaps share something that they've gained from Sheila's group?
I have really enjoyed all of the different speakers and different techniques of automatic writing that have come out. I'm not full-fledged yet, but I'm always picking up interesting things to try and adapt. And her book, I actually had could relate to, not in the sense of losing someone, but in the sense of the strict religious, cultish type background. I had other things I was going to say, but I've enjoyed coming to her meetings. And one thing that I have, there's always a sense of acceptance, no matter where you are on your spiritual path. There's a acceptance, and there are a lot of. I always tell people when I talk to them about Sheila's meeting that there's a lot of intelligent, educated, as there are here. This is why I love these groups so much, because it's not woo-woo. It's not senseless. It's not nonsense. It's very real. And I so appreciate everyone, all of you. And thank you. And thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. We love having you.
Yeah, I'm one of the original people for Sheila's group, and I have to say I haven't missed a meeting yet.
That's right.
Oh,
No, it's true. And I make copious notes at every meeting, and I have them in a box in my office, just like I do all of our meetings, because I just love everything that we do in our groups. And I can't believe, Sheila, when you said we've had 150 people in the last 6 years come and go, and a lot are real regulars. And for sure, Christine, you're right. I think everybody is so welcomed, and they can talk about anything that they want to talk about and not feel, out of place. And we have had so many subjects and so many good speakers, and I just love it. So
Yeah.
we're always open, huh, Sheila?
We are. And not all speakers are going to resonate in the same way with everybody, but we're there to just listen and take it in and take what we can from it. Sometimes I don't feel like going to the group because, I've had a long day or something like everybody. But I find that every time, and I'm there all the time, I always feel better by the time I'm done. And I thank God, spirit guides, whoever gave me this opportunity to lead this group, because it really does a lot for me personally.
That's beautiful, Sheila. Christine?
I had a question for Sheila, and I noticed the synchronicity also. So you mentioned Salvatore, that the person on the plane was Salvatore,
Oh, yeah.
and then a question popped in my mind. Did that inspire you to write a mystery about a murder on a plane or a murder on a plane. And then I saw the synchronicity about let's see, I'm trying to blank the other Salvatore, the
Lisa.
Yes.
Lisa, Lisa and I exchanged services. I analyzed her handwriting and she did a chart for me. And she really is quite amazing. In fact, I've got one of her videos, her latest video queued up to find out what's going to happen this week with the Scorpio new moon. So it's going to be explosive, apparently. She's very good. I told her she reminded me a lot of John Edward, and she said he's a good friend of hers. So like maybe they were twins in a past life or something.
Do we have anybody who does automatic writing?
Yes, I do it every morning. This is part of my mediumship practice. And I actually went to Sheila's group one time because I was thinking that we would be doing that we would be doing a practice. And it was Cheryl Page was there, and I love Cheryl. I love what she has to offer. She's talking about the gematria, which I'd seen her talk about before. But my practice is the first thing I do in the morning. It's absolutely the first thing I do. I put the dogs out to go to the bathroom, and then I sit down, and what I tend to do is get myself really well established in an energy field that I can feel very strongly. And then I have a journal, and then I start asking my team, and I write down the first thing. I write some gratitude in my journal first, and then I write, team, what would you and or my soul want me to know today? That's the question I ask. And then I go into the meditation, and how I differentiate random thought from, this is guidance to write it down, is I'll sit there and stuff will start coming in, and then I hear my guide say, "Are you going to write that down?" And it's like, yeah, okay. So it's like, or they'll say, "Write that down," and so then I know to start writing. And I have so many of those little black and white memo books, that they do for thesis writing. I have so many of those filled, but I do this every single morning, and most of the time it comes from my team. Sometimes I get things from my mother or from my father, or sometimes I get awakened in the middle of the night, like at 3 a.m, and I'll ask, okay, is there something? Yes, we have a message for you. Yeah, ding dong, there's a message for you. You got mail. And I'll sit and I'll do my meditation and do some automatic writing. But I have so much gratitude for that, because it's absolutely guiding my life. It absolutely is guiding my life. And I that's why I went to your group one time, Sheila, and I was thinking, oh, good, we're going to do this together. But it was a speaker, and I didn't know whether that was something that you offer or not, to ever do together.
For the first 2 years, I would say we focused solely on automatic writing, and then we started branching out. So it's not that we don't do it anymore, and we probably should go back to our roots sometimes. But, what can I say? We've fallen down on the job. By the way, I wanted to mention that Gordon was one of our recent speakers too. Did I miss anyone that's here? Yeah,
Okay.
I wonder if I could ask a question. Oh, well, never mind. Beth has her hand up, so I'll save my question.
I was just going to add on to what Ellen said, because it's very interesting listening to you, Ellen. I get my guidance in the morning when I wake up. And I will lie in bed, and I get exactly what you said. I get, are you going to write this down? And I note again, I have a pen and paper beside my bed and write it down. And like you, I go with the guidance, and I have found since I've written it down, since I've gone with so much more of what I've been told first thing in the morning, life's been so much easier. Life flows. It's so much there's so many synchronicities as well. And occasionally, when I get something that is a bit I'm not sure about, I'll ask for guidance, and I'll ask for proof of, and I got that from Suzanne Giesman, asking for proof, and say, could you bring that back to me again in the next 24 hours? And it usually comes in the next 2 or 3 hours. Something which says, yes, you got it right. Or, and if nothing comes, well, it may come up again another morning. But I suppose that is automatic writing. I only write down though when I'm pushed to. So I'm not sitting there actually meditating, writing. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you're both good in the morning. For me, I have to do, if I'm doing anything like that, late at night, because then my mind isn't thinking about, what's going on in the day. And nobody's like, I have a housemate and she's in her room sleeping. But so, which leads me to my question, if you don't mind, and that's about candle behavior. I decided this week that it was time for me to get back into a practice of attempting automatic writing. And so a couple of nights in a row, it was like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I sat at my table in the dining room with all the other lights off and had a candle, which is really difficult for me because I have this ridiculous fear of fire. It's just beyond anything. But I have this candle in a big, sturdy candle holder, and I put it on, and almost right away it started just kind of going crazy and jumping and all over the place. And I thought, is this spirit or is this just how candles act? And then it calmed down for a while, and then it would do it again, maybe not to such an extreme, but it was so impressive to me that I got my camera, my phone, and videoed a few of it, a few seconds of it. So how would you differentiate whether I didn't feel like there was anything like I would expect to feel spirit, like I said, get the tingling on top of my head. And I didn't get anything when I was trying to, focus and write. I had my black mirror there. But does anybody have any experience with candle behavior?
Yes. When I have that experience with candles, I will ask for them to calm it and center it. And then if indeed it is someone, for them to make it go higher, or so that if it is someone that's trying to connect, then they will respond accordingly. So that's what I do when I see that kind of candle activity.
Okay.
At one time, we were trying to decide whether to go and see Sai Baba. And we were just having a group meeting, all sitting round in a circle. I can't remember what we were discussing or anything. But right at the beginning, we had tried to light a very large orange candle, and it didn't light. And the meeting went on. We were discussing all sorts of different things. And I don't remember how long, but say half to an hour later, somebody mentioned the word Sai Baba, and this orange candle that had been dormant all that time suddenly sprang into life with a large flame. So
that's pretty impressive.
So that's my candle experience.
Thanks, Jane. Bill?
Yeah. Well, there's a little short story with it, Wendy. My cousin lost his wife almost 6 years ago, and I got a download, what I call a download, which is just a thought straight into your head. And it was, he hasn't lit a candle for me. And I knew it was the anniversary of his wife's passing. So I lit a candle. I'll have to tell you which one it was. It was a Yankee candle, so it's in a jar. So the wick's below the rim.
Right.
And as soon as we lit it, it started to dance. And I mean, it was wobbling all over the place inside the jar. And this is some 5 feet away from where we're sitting, me and the wife. And it danced all day. It never burnt with a steady flame and like flicker a little bit like they often do. It just danced all day. So I'd phoned my cousin. I didn't get a reply. So I phoned him the next day. And I said, you didn't light a candle for Hazel. And I tried to phone you and you weren't in. He says, I was at the hospital all day. He said, I lit it the night before, the day before, on the Sunday. He'd gone to hospital on the Monday. And he forgot to put the heat resistant pad underneath the candle. So he put a big brown mark on the table. So rather than light a candle on her birthday, he'd done it on the Sunday. And I said, well, she come and told me that you hadn't lit the candle today. So I lit one for her and it danced all day. And he just couldn't believe it. And I've never seen a candle since that's done that. It was just amazing how it just seemed to dance as if the flame was coming up off the wick and then going back down onto the wick and moving from side to side. It was just phenomenal.
Well, that's what was going on with my candle. And it was also in a jar. So it was well below the rim. It wasn't a brand new candle. So that's when you get a download like that, are you always in trance or is it just happen?
No, it just happened, Sheila. I mean, I should say a little bit about the two that I did with you, because it's 1:30 in the morning when it starts from the UK.
Yeah.
And I know they were a month apart. And it was actually very interesting and a lot of questions. But the second one, when you already had a meeting to go to and you just left it open, that was the all-nighter, as I call it. Because it was actually breaking daylight in the UK by the time we finished. I think we were on about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And there was so many questions and we had a terrific talk about all sorts of things spiritual. It was really amazing. But the thing that bothered me the most that second time was after I'd finished and there was total silence from the viewers. I had a full screen of people and nobody seemed to move, blink or anything. And I thought the screen had frozen and you'd missed it all. And then you spoke and broke the ice. And I thought, oh, thank God it's seen everything.
Well, you have to.
So that's mine. I'd love to come back, but I've got to build myself up for night shift.
Yeah, well, let me know when you're ready. That video is on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I've had an experience with this too, and I hesitated to tell the story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I edited a book for a friend of mine called The Resonance Code, and it's kind of esoteric, metaphysical meets science book. Anyway, we were holding a book study class on Zoom, and I had a candle burning on my altar, and we were talking about the various different planes in her model, the various different planes of the human psyche, and we were talking about the light plane, which is the inspirational plane. And the candle that was on my altar exploded. It blew up. I had to actually get up and the glass broke. It fell over, and I had to kind of clean it up in the middle of the class. It just so happened that was during a period of time when I was singing in a choir who was singing for the dying, and we had someone. This was right before everything got locked down in March of 2020, and right after the class, I realized that the woman who was in the hospital dying was calling me. So I picked up my stool and I took it to the hospital and I sat down and I sang 3 songs for her. And on the 4th song, she left her body. So for me, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had singing for the dying, because I was actually able to sit with her and watched her. I watched her kind of go around the room a little bit. And then she realized it was like and then she sat down in a chair. She was out of her body. She sat down in the chair and she realized she was looking at herself and she realized she was dead. And she asked me to sing something that was Christian for her. So I sang the song of what Christ said on the cross, into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. And I sang that over and over again until I could see. And what happened was this, she went up through the ceiling with these two light beings. It was like this light was coming down from underneath her, but beneath her arms as she was being lifted up through the ceiling. And once I knew she was out of the room, I went and told the nurse that she had passed. But I didn't want her to have that experience. I wanted her spirit to be carried out before, I was helping her. But that definitely, that candle experience for me was like spirit coming in and going, boom, you have work to go do your work, was basically what I felt that message was. So
That would terrify me.
I hesitate to share that story because it's so deep for me, but that's what happened.
That's a wonderful story. I don't leave candles burn. I once, many years ago, I went away and left a candle burning. It was, for some reason, and it was supposed to burn for a certain number of days. And I went to Tucson, I think it was. And while I was gone, there was an earthquake. Luckily, the candle was okay, but I would never do that again.
I mean, it'd be interesting to do a few experiments just with candles and the flame and just sort of look what it normally happens, and then perhaps try an invocation, just asking somebody to move it or turn it off, turn it on, turn it. I remember, Sherry, do you remember that video that you took, that your son took after Danny died, and he did it with the street lights? Do you remember that one? And
Well, I have a lot of videos with lights going on and off, but I've also just used incense, candlelight, so many things to record on electronics and find that they'll produce images, not just steam. I'm starting to get a collection. So I'm not sure which video you're referring to. I have a lot of videos I can put together that if you want me to show
the
them,
one
but
I'm thinking
these were
about
more
is
street.
the street lights. Your son was outside, and he was saying,
Aaron,
Dan, Aaron was outside, and he was saying, Dan, turn it on, turn it off. And the street lights responded.
Yes, of course. It was one street light. It was an overhead street light. I'll look up the video. I'll put some together for you. But yet what happened was he was videoing in our old neighborhood. Big overhead street lamp was on. And as he looked up at it, it went off. And he just had a feeling. So he said, put it back on, Dan. And you watch a video a few seconds later. And this is a way big overhead, nothing we could reach or be near. There's response. If spirit is around, my experience is ask and you shall receive.
My daughter did the same thing with those tall street lamps for a long time. Every time I'd walk under, it didn't matter where it was, any street lamp I walked under, it would go out. And
it's amazing. I just recommend to people to just be playful with it, because spirit will. We see it now, they will use what they can to help us. And I agree with the woman who said that she guides her life by it, because spirit's wise and they really do love us and they try to help us. And I don't think I get better advice anywhere than when I listen, into the line that I hear, because aside from being really loving, they're also giving me, directing me in ways that are beneficial, are things I should consider before I walk out the door. So just open, just be open, because it's wonderful. However it comes.
Absolutely fascinating. Sheila, I'd like to get you to talk a little bit about publishing as well.
Oh, sure.
Because a lot of people here are interested in writing, or writing their memoir, or writing a book. And as you said earlier, they never get around to actually doing it. And maybe I can always remember you said, just because you can write a book, it doesn't mean that you should.
That's right. Yeah, it's hard work. Let
It
me tell
is.
you.
It is hard work, I mean, you are a superb writer. You really are, and I think you know that from the responses that you get from all of your readers. Perhaps you might like to tell us a little bit about your of all the books you've written. Do you have any favorites? So there's some that really you say, wow, I'm so glad I wrote that. Or you might feel it with all of them. Perhaps if you could just tell us a little bit for those people who don't know about your books and about the process that you use when you write.
Yeah, which is my favorite book is like, which is your favorite child? You know?
Yeah, I
Of
can
all your
imagine.
children. But actually, I do have a couple of favorites. This is a bookmark, and I have a series that I wrote about a forensic handwriting examiner. It's not me, but it's a case of art imitating life. And this character, Claudia Rose, goes through a lot of adventures. And in fact, today, until the end of, well, maybe even until tomorrow, one of the books, which is called Ink Slinger's Ball, is free for the ebook. If you go to Amazon, you can get it for free. And I really like that book because there's a girl in it. Well, she's 16 by now. When I introduce her in Written in Blood, she's 14, and she's very much like my daughter. So she gets into the same kinds of ridiculous, awful scrapes. And yeah, so of course there's murders and that sort of thing. But I also, a couple of years ago, several years ago now, started writing another type of series called Beyond the Veil, which is also suspense and mystery, but they feature a young woman who talks to dead people. So several years ago, well, without going into a whole long thing, I wrote a book that I thought was a standalone called What She Saw, and it's about a young woman who wakes up on a train and realizes that she doesn't know who she is or where she's going, anything. She knows nothing, and she gets off the train and meets somebody in town who seems to know her and goes through a lot of stuff. So several years later, I was getting prompts from Spirit. Every time I would get a reading, I would hear, you need to write a new book, but it's going to be different. It needs to be autobiographical. And I'm thinking, I don't want to do that. I always thought after Jennifer was killed that I would write a book about her. But my feeling was, what can I write? It's so sad. She ends up being killed. And so I kept resisting doing that. And so I'm getting this message, write a book. So I thought, well, I can use what I've learned over the past, almost 20 years about Spirit, and I can write a fiction book. And then I realized that the young woman who woke up on the train with amnesia should be the protagonist in the new book. And it starts out with her having a near-death experience. And she meets a guy, and her child is killed in a car accident, and she's almost killed. And it starts out with her meeting an angel who, and her child goes on, but she has to come back. And then I kept still hearing the same message from mediums. A lot of, I'm a psychic junkie, so I get a lot of readings. And I kept hearing this, you've got to write autobiographical. And I said, well, didn't I? And then I wrote the sequel, which is called, whatever it's called, The Last Door, about two sisters who inherit a Victorian mansion from a stranger. And that is a whole, same characters. And still, I'm getting the same message. So finally, now it's like 2 years ago. Well, the end of December, the year before last, I thought, maybe I better do what Spirit says and write an autobiographical book. And so on January 1st, I started making a a summary, an outline is what I'm trying to say, of what I wanted to cover in the book. And I always knew it would be called Growing from the Ashes. On February 1st, I started writing that book. And on February 27th, I wrote the end, which was phenomenal for me because it usually takes me about 9 months to write a book. This was a little shorter, but still. And so my first 6 books were published by big publishing houses like Penguin and Macmillan. And then I went to a small publishing house and who I really liked a lot, but then I decided that I would independently publish all of my titles. So for the past 3 years, I've been publishing, I took all my rights back and I've published all 19 books. And I published them through KDP, which is Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. And according to them, in the past 3 years, I've sold 350,000 some books. You'd think that I've made a lot of money, but you make very little money on book sales. So yeah, you get 70% of the sale price, which could be like $2.99 to $6.99 are my books, my ebooks. And so I have learned how to format the books myself. I hire an editor. It's all very important if you're writing a book to hire a developmental editor who will work with you and make sure that you're doing it correctly, that you're not being stupid. And I'm not talking about a copy editor who tells you about your spelling and grammar. A developmental editor tells you, with the characterization, and I'm talking, this is true. It's less true with a nonfiction book, but with fiction, you need to have somebody to work with and make sure that the character development is correct and setting and dialogue and all that sort of thing. I just finished editing a book for a friend who should have known better, but there's a way of writing dialogue. People in books don't speak exactly the same way as they do in life, for example. So there's a lot to keep in mind. So you need a developmental editor, you need a copy editor at the end, or a proofreader, which can be very expensive. They're hundreds of dollars just to proofread. It could be $800, depending on who you get. And you need a cover designer. Like even if you are an artist, you may contribute to the cover, but you need a professional so that it looks professional. And I just was in a seminar the other day where the speaker made a very good point. He said, people will say, oh, I'm going to make this book look so different. I want it to stand out. He said, don't do that. That's a very bad idea. People are looking for what they know. So it should be similar to other books in its genre. So I ended up paying like over $500 a cover for these. It's a square because I took it from the audiobook cover because I have audiobooks too.
Hi, Sheila. First of all, I'll say happy birthday for this month. I don't know what it is, but you told me that it was November.
The 9th. Thank you very much.
Hey, oh, great. We're going on a steam train run that day.
Have fun.
Good. I want to ask you, Sheila, when people are doing automatic writing, are they doing some may be doing it in their own handwriting, but from spirit urges or messages that they've got? Others may be using or maybe getting a handwriting which is not their own. And I wonder, have you had anybody who has been doing that where there are two separate handwritings, one for the actual person and then one for the spirit one?
Yes, I have. I was in fact looking at an instance of that in a monograph by a man named Joe Zamuda, and there were certainly some differences. And it's similar to analyzing a person who has multiple personality disorder, or what they now call dissociative identity disorder. is the writing different enough to say that it's not, that it's a different personality? And so, yeah, I haven't studied enough cases of automatic writing, but the ones I've seen, you could definitely see differences where I know that it was a person who was in trance, for example.
Right. And
Usually the handwriting, not always, the handwriting tends to become bigger and more expanded. But there is a woman named Vasula, I think her name was, a Greek woman, who feels that she channels Virgin Mary, as I recall. And her handwriting got very rigid and extremely, well, I guess I'll just leave it at rigid. It was.
Would they be able to write in that place? I suppose. Would they be writing Aramaic or something?
No, it was all in English.
Okay. And can you see the personality through the writing?
Well, sure, because handwriting, I use the Gestalt method, and handwriting is made up of space, form, and movement. And so it's the movement that changes the most with automatic writing. Like I said, bigger, more expanded. It may be the pen gets less controlled because spirit isn't maybe actually holding the pen, but they're guiding it. And so it may be harder to read. It's not as legible when it gets really extreme. And Tamara and Honey are also handwriting analysts. I don't know if they've had any experience seeing that.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I did have one a pastor in a church down in Florida who asked me to look at his automatic writing, and I looked at it, and so did Ruth Holmes. And Sheila, there really wasn't that much of a difference.
Right.
But and I didn't, like I said, I didn't read his messages, but there wasn't a big difference.
Yeah, I've only seen a big difference a couple of times. But like I said, I haven't seen all that many instances of it. If somebody wants to send me some, I'd be happy to look at it. But whatever it is, it will show personality.
Fantastic. Dan?
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Sheila. I think sometime I want to consult with you because I'm considering doing an Amazon Kindle publishing of an essay of mine. That's a whole other thing, but
Sure.
Shouldn't we be distinguishing between genuine, like full automatic writing and what some mediums call just transcription of what they hear? And is there a middle ground? What have you found in your own work?
Well, I honestly, frankly, haven't done that much of it. But I think it would be hard to know because, sometimes people say, is it my higher self or is it a guide or what? So I don't know. I think you would have to know maybe by the message if it's something that you wouldn't normally say. I don't know.
In terms of content and language and
Yes.
so on. But I'm asking strictly in terms of handwriting.
Okay.
Because you just mentioned a case in which the handwriting was not that different, or someone had mentioned that. I think Tamara mentioned that. And so I'm wondering whether there is this, like we know that some mediums simply transcribe what they hear, and the other extreme would be full automatic writing.
Well, I don't understand the difference because if they're transcribing, I guess it depends how you define automatic writing, and we found that it's several different things. And it may be, the spirit takes hold of the hand. I think that's fairly rare. And it may be inspired writing, and it may be typewritten, or it may be handwriting. So it's lots of different things.
Right, I agree. Okay, and perhaps we don't have enough nomenclature to break down all the subtle variations. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was why I was interested in being in a group about automatic writing, so I would learn more. But I can't say that I've learned a lot more about it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Laurie?
Yeah, my understanding of that is that there's inspired writing and then there's automatic writing. And usually, I think normally, my understanding of that is that automatic writing is done in a trance where a person doesn't know, or maybe in the dark, where they don't know what their hand is doing. And I don't write, with a pen or a pencil. So I've done inspired writing for probably 10 years. And the way it works with me is that I receive, it's like a download. It happens really fast. And then I have to sort of open the package and take everything out. And that's when I start writing things down. And when it comes in like that really fast, then I know it was from spirit. If I think too much, then it's probably me. That's how it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wondered what it would be like. Well, I have even tried it a couple of times. If I did, sit in front of a blank piece of paper with a pen or a pencil in my hand, they never moved my hand, but I thought it'd be really interesting if they did, because I can't do that myself. So, I mean, whatever I got in a case like that would have to be from spirit.
Mm. Yeah, there seems to be so many different ways of doing it. When you were speaking, it reminded me of a time when a friend of mine who had taken hypnosis classes came over to my house, and she had me sit at my dining table, and I had my left hand resting on the table, my elbow and arm on the table. And she had me close my eyes, and she started talking and talking. And then she was saying something like lifting and flying, or lifting and something. And I was just sitting there quietly thinking, I'm not getting hypnotized. And she told me to open my eyes, and my right arm was up here. And I just like that. And I had no idea of that. And so I think of it in the same way, does that mean I was in some kind of a trance? And do you need to be in that state to do automatic writing? I really don't know. But there's just so many different methods and means of doing the same thing. I don't think there is any right or wrong way. But then maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Thanks, Sheila. Laurie, does that answer your question, or do you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yes. Yeah, it was just a comment.
Okay. Thanks very much. Priscilla?
Yes, I had an experience about a month ago with inspired writing, I guess you could say. Now, I have a deceased husband, and I had felt him really, it was in the morning, and I felt like he was close to me. I just felt like his presence was very close. So I sat down at my table with a pen, and I started writing to him. I guess maybe I was asking him questions. I have it. I have it in my file. And then I got an answer. It sounded like him talking to me. Now, however, I was moving my hand, but I was transcribing. And it was a terrific experience. I mean, something really happened, and it unfolded in my dreams the next couple nights also. And so that was my first effort at automatic writing, and it was so wonderful. I'm afraid to try it again.
Priscilla, come on.
I'm afraid I'll be disappointed.
Well, even if you're disappointed next time, you'll still have that first time.
But what I am getting here now is I apparently am a morning person. When I wake up and get out of bed, I can still be dreaming. And that's when I need to be sitting down to do some writing before my brain gets fired up. So I will do that. And I've been inspired by this group to do that.
Wonderful. Some people find it at 3 o'clock in the morning, like Kathleen would say. They would get her up and she'd sit in her chair and write at 3 in the morning. I would have a terrible time doing that. So it's different for everyone.
Well, what I'm doing at 3 a.m. is writing down my dreams. I've been writing down my dreams now for several months, and I have found that to be quite illuminating about what's going on with my subconscious.
Yeah, I envy people who remember their dreams.
The HemiSync, listening to HemiSync before I go to bed helps my memory.
I stopped listening because it was making me feel nauseated. I think the binaural thing. Maybe I should try it again.
I'm sorry.
I'm not the only I've heard that from other people, but it may just be the piece that I was listening to. Last night I was listening to Quantum K Healing, which is a really good thing too. Completely off the topic.
Gordon, can I ask you if you've had any experiences with automatic writing or any? I know you're a great student of the past. Have you come across any automatic writers that we should know about?
Oh, I think thanks, Wendy. But my experience is with the sort of the classics like Geraldine Cummings. We reread all my library of Geraldine Cummings books a few weeks ago. And she talks about her, or writes about her experience and the hand taking over and all sorts of things. So, and there's other writers that, who of them I can't remember now. There's too many in the field. But I would like to say, I'd like to agree with Sheila in that there's so many ways of doing this she's right to say there's no one right way to do it or one right attitude, that everyone has their own approach to it or their own way of adapting to it, their own way of relating to spirits or their higher self or their guides. And I think everyone should just, approach it the way that they're most comfortable with, whether it's at 7 a.m. or 3 a.m. I mean, I do a lot of channeling. Which is, I make videos, as you know. I do a lot of that at 4 a.m. It's quite a remarkable experience because obviously you get up out of bed, you're a bit dopey, you have to wake yourself up, you get the computer going and you do it. And suddenly you're sort of quite lucid as you talk to a spirit or you listen to a spirit talking to you. And then after you're done, you sort of wind down and go back to bed. Now, I mean, I'm not saying anyone else should do that, but it works for me. And, I think Sheila said just a little while ago, she couldn't possibly get up in the middle of the night and do channeling or automatic writing. And, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have guessed either, but here I do it. I've done a bit of it writing, where my book, Jesus and the Christ, where I seem to be channeling, done in 2007, Maitreya and Jesus. I did most of that in a Starbucks, sitting with my laptop at the time with headphones on, listening to sort of inspired, choir music, religious choir music. And it was remarkable that I could do this between one shift at work and another, but I did. And I would just hear the voices in my head and I would type it out what they were saying. And that's how the book ended up becoming a book. And before I did it, I wouldn't have guessed that I would have done it. It was quite a shock to me to be doing that. And, but, I did it and, I haven't really done much of it since, but mostly I'm channeling, making videos with voice, as you know. And, but to re-emphasize what I just said, everyone should do it their own way and not worry about not doing it the correct way. As Sheila says, and she's got more experience of it than me in terms of her class and discussing it with people for years. I haven't got that experience, but it seems to me it's, everyone should do it their own way, the way they're most comfortable with.
So it works just as well with a typewriter as handwriting. Sheila, I know you're a great advocate for actual pen to paper. Have you ever tried typing? Or do any of your group try the typing, automatic typing?
Not formally, but somebody, a medium once told me that my form of mediumship was handwriting analysis, because I do write personality profiles for people based on their handwriting. And there are some times when I write something, or not just that, but in other occasions where I'm typing an email or something, and I write something and I think, oh, that wasn't from me. Because it wasn't something I would have thought of, but I think it was a message for that person. So, there's lots of different ways.
But I'm just going back to A Course in Miracles. That was done on a typewriter. I think, was it Helen Schussman? It was an amazing story that she was getting the material and then she would stop, and when she'd come back the next morning, it would take on automatically from the point where she left it, like word for word. And there's some amazing, Chico Xavier was absolutely incredible as automatic writing, as you know. He was writing down he wrote 10,000 messages from loved ones.
Wow. In
his own hand, and the handwriting changed. And I think on 3 occasions, the messages were admitted to a court of law in relation. One particular one, he got the message that the young man who had been killed, they were trying his friend for shooting him, and the message came through that it was an accident and there was no intent. And that exonerated the young man who was on trial. Wow. Fascinating stuff. The other one that, of course, is absolutely the classic case is Mirabelli in the 1920s in Brazil. He was writing pages and pages in different languages. And mirror writing, that's the other thing, where the writing is back to front. And if you look up some of the work of Mirabelli, it was just absolutely incredible. The writing. So,
Da Vinci used to do mirror writing. I wonder if that was inspired.
Could well be. It's pretty hard to do mirror writing from the conscious mind. Christina, did you have something to add?
Sheila, people's handwriting does change as they get older, and sometimes it's almost illegible.
Sometimes. It's an entirely individual thing. Yes, many people's handwriting change. It's not necessarily because of age. And excuse me for interrupting you, but I forget things quickly. It's a matter of your life experiences. Your handwriting changes to show how you grow and change. But there certainly are physiological effects, like if you are sick, and if as you age you get weaker and maybe have more trouble holding a pen, but not everybody his handwriting changes because of age. So,
have you come across any way of predicting or diagnosing some sort of sickness because of the way that the handwritings change?
As I'm not a doctor, I cannot diagnose, but I have a whole lecture on how to see artifacts of physiological changes in handwriting. And one of them that comes to mind is of a woman who had cancer, and it's microscopically how her handwriting changed over a 2 or 3 year period. There are things like, and you really need a magnifier to see it. And you have to make sure, it's hard to say. As a professional, I know whether it's because of the pen or whether it's because of illness, but little dots may appear on the ink line, and that shows you where in the body the illness is. Like if you think of the cursive letter F, it goes from the bottom up to the top. So the letter F would represent the human body, and the top of the F is the head, and the bottom is the feet. And so where those dots or other things might appear, like if it's in the middle, it could be the stomach area, things like that. But I could never diagnose a disease. If there's a little break in the line, oftentimes it means that there was a broken bone. things like there's a lot of things to look for.
Oh, that's fascinating. It can be a bit like precipitation. Remember the writing on the wall, which what would it say? Many tekel a parson, something like that. That you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. So precipitation, where you can put a pen or a pencil in a casket, not a casket because that's a coffin, isn't it? In a in a box, and close it with some paper there, and it will write itself by some spirit, some way, somehow. And have you had that sort of thing? Have you analyzed that sort of writing?
Not that, but in fact, I think it was this talk that I gave for this group several years back about what the skull experimenters did, and they got Edison's handwriting on a closed spool of film, and when it was developed, it had his handwriting on it, and they wanted to. Gary Schwartz, I think it was, gave it to me and said, "Was this his handwriting?" So that was similar to what you're talking about.
Mm.
And yeah, it was consistent with his handwriting while on Earth.
Right. When I'm a touch typist, so when I get on, I've tried this with a computer, and I just know where I'm going with it. If you get these messages, I don't know. So it doesn't work for me that way. But when I write, I will come up with a word or be looking for a word, but I'll really wait and think what will come. And I get a word. Yeah, that's a much better word. That's right. It sends me on another sort of tangent, and I can edit my work as I'm going, but I'm waiting for that word to come, So I don't know where it's coming from. My subconscious maybe, but spirit maybe.
Could well be spirit inspiration. That's right.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I think, Sheila, why don't you give some thought to your actual knowledge of forensic writing and analysis, and talk about that with your group? I think that.
I have. We did a session on graphotherapy, which is handwriting exercises that you can do to put your brain switch from left to right brain, or to change behaviors. So we did talk about that quite a while back.
Right.
I think Sheila did a talk for us on handwriting, didn't you? I seem to remember there's one in our archives.
Possibly.
It's absolutely fascinating. And Sheila's written a book on handwriting, haven't you?
6 books.
6 books on
yeah. One of
Sheila's an expert on handwriting.
Well, according to the courts, I am. I've been in the field of handwriting since 1967, so I'm really old.
Can you tell us a little bit about one of your cases in court that was I know.
Yeah, maybe it will be of interest to some. Maybe 10 years ago, there was a man who called himself Clark Rockefeller, and he said he was in the Rockefeller family, and he was a con artist. And it turned out that he was wanted as a person of interest in a murder here in California, from a murder from the 1980s. I have a whole lecture on that, but it was the shortest testimony I've ever given, because it's a long story. Some of what several handwriting analysts said that the handwriting on a postcard was, no, I got to go back. Okay, so this young couple disappeared. Okay, John and Linda disappeared. And some weeks later, their family and friends got postcards supposedly written by Linda saying, we never made it to New York, because they claimed they were going to New York, but it's postmarked in Paris. but they never came back. Nobody knew what happened to them. And then the John's mother died of a broken heart, and somebody new bought the house. This is like 8 years later, and they started digging up the backyard for a swimming pool. And guess what they found? Bones of a male that at that time they didn't have DNA, but later they identified it as John Sohus. But Linda was never found. So now they're trying Clark Rockefeller. It's another whole thing. He kidnapped his child in Boston, and when the police found him, they found out he was a person of interest in this case in California, if that makes any sense at all. And so these postcards were given to several handwriting analysts, and they said, no, that's not Linda Sohus's handwriting. And they gave it to me for a personality analysis. But while I was looking at the samples, I thought, my first thought was, no, it doesn't look like hers at all. And then I asked for some additional samples, and I determined that it was definitely her handwriting. I have no doubt. And her sister and her boss agreed with me. So Clark Rockefeller's attorney called me from Boston. They had extradited him to California for the case. And so his attorney called and said, we want you to testify. And I said, I don't want to testify for your client. I think he's probably guilty. And he said, that's okay. We just want you to testify to the truth of what you believe. So their theory of the case was Linda killed her husband and disappeared. And yes, this was her handwriting. So they subpoenaed me the grand jury subpoenaed me. And I testified, and there was a TV camera pointing at me. And I was on the stand and off in about 10 minutes. And the attorney questioned me very briefly. And then the district attorney got up for cross-examination. He said, so, Miss Lowe, you believe that Linda Sohus wrote these postcards? And I said, yes. And he said, do you know under what circumstances they were written? And I said, no, because, he could have had a gun to her head. And he said, no more questions. So that was it.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating work.
Yeah. Well, when my daughter brought home this new boyfriend's handwriting, that wasn't a court case because he killed himself too. But it was very clear to me that there were signals, red flags for pathological behavior, sudden outbursts of violence that we discussed in his handwriting. Handwriting can't tell you everything about a person, but it sure can give a lot of important information.